The Lousy Magician and the Stray Cat. Written by W.P. Thrift. Tobias Finch was a street magician, known to everyone in the city, aware of his existence as Toby. This was not a name of endearment, but rather it was all they managed to catch of his name before walking rather abruptly away from him. Toby lived in a tiny basement studio that technically counted as an apartment, the same way a car abandoned in the woods for years that now has a tree growing up through it still counts as a car. Paint peeled from the walls like sunburned skin. The heater rattled like it was dying of a cold. The only truly magical thing in the room was how the rent stayed low, because the landlord was super convinced the building was haunted. Every morning, Toby would practice his craft with the sort of optimism that should honestly be illegal. He'd pull out his bent deck of playing cards, give them a crooked shuffle before whispering, "Today's the day, Finch. Today you won't pick the wrong card." It was 1 in 52 odds of guessing the right card. Yet by sheer bad luck, he'd never chosen the right card in over 200 attempts. "Is this your card?" "No." Are you sure?" To watch Toby perform was painful, bemusing sometimes, sure, but mostly just painful. When he tried to vanish a coin, the coin would just plunk into his pocket in full view of the audience, which would already have begun to drift away. When he tried to pull a rabbit from a hat, he grew panicked to see his hat had a hole in it, and the rabbit had long escaped. Also, it wasn't a rabbit he'd stowed away in there, but rather a squirrel he caught at lunch that day and dressed in rabbit ears. Basically, Toby was pretty bad at magic. No matter how much energy and optimism he'd pour into his craft, enthusiasm alone was not enough to make people care about his performance. On one particularly miserable gray morning, Toby trudged towards his usual performance corner, the stretch of sidewalk beside a subway entrance that smelled vaguely of pretzels and disappointment, when an orange streak shot across his path. It was a cat. A scrappy, fluffy, traffic cone orange stray, with a tail like a bottle brush and eyes that said, "I commit several crimes daily." As the cat veered towards him and stood in his way, Toby muttered "shoo," waving a hand half-heartedly. The cat blinked at him. "Go on, get away. I'm allergic." Toby lied to the cat. He was not allergic. He also was not able to appeal to the cat's sympathies, as it did not understand what he was saying. Toby walked on, faster than before, stepping around the cat, only to nearly step on the cat as it darted forward between his feet like a little gremlin. "Would you go chase that squirrel or something?" Toby snapped, pointing over at a squirrel whom somebody had dressed in fake rabbit ears. Arriving at his usual performance spot, the cat plopped down at his feet, tail curled around its paws as it began grooming itself with great vigor, purring softly while it licked its own shoulder. Toby sighed. "Fine, whatever. Just don't try to trip me again while I'm performing, okay, cat?" He set up his little cardboard sign, "Magic Show, tips appreciated." He awaited the inevitable fate which befell him every single day. People would walk quickly by, glancing his way with all the pensiveness of evaluating a moldy sandwich before hurrying on. Toby had barely set his battered hat on the sidewalk to gather tips in, when the orange cat trotted over and pushed his hat off the curb, like it was a coffee cup being pushed off a table. Then the cat flopped hard onto its side, a full dramatic death drop, before rolling around like the most attention-starved feline in the world. "No, stop it!" Toby hissed under his breath, trying to nudge the cat out of his performance space with one hand and fetching his hat to place back in its spot with the other. "Scat cat, get out of here. This is precision work. This is all very delicate. Hey!" The cat had spotted a woman with a tote bag and immediately wound itself around her ankles, tail held high like a victory flag. "Oh, well, hello!" The woman laughed, bending down to pet it. Toby jumped back up from his crouch, standing straight, trying to recall what the first trick he wanted to perform today was. He had his first potential audience member of the day right in front of him, and his mind had gone completely blank because of that cat messing him up. Then a couple of teenagers stopped, and an older man paused, and a hipster holding a latte hovered nearby, all because the cat was taking turns rubbing its face on everyone's shoes like it was personally blessing them. Toby swallowed hard, while closing his eyes, trying to clear his head just for a single heartbeat, so that he could gather his thoughts and press on with his show. He couldn't even remember the last time this many people were stopped next to him. He was usually lucky to have more than a single person watching him at a time. "Okay, folks, welcome. Welcome to the amazing Toby's Magic Show. Watch now while I make this coin disappear." He held up a quarter for all the crowd to see. But the sudden motion of his arm drew the cat's attention, and it rushed over to leap up onto his legs, sinking its tiny nails into his knee. "Ack!" Toby cried out quietly, dropping the quarter, which booped the cat right on the head, before bouncing away and rolling off and straight down a sewer grate. "I was going to buy lunch with that quarter." Toby's eyes grew wide with sorrow, and the crowd cracked up laughing. Toby was used to people laughing at him, so he was unmoved by this. But as his eyes went from one face to another, he felt strange. This was because nobody laughing had scorn or contempt upon their faces. Their expressions were all mirthful, joyous. The crowd wasn't laughing at him at all. They were laughing along with him, entertained by his little disappearing coin trick. "What a clever cat you have," the old man said. "He helped you make your coin disappear. Here, I can help you get a few coins back." And then the old man dropped some spare change into his hat. The magician gasped at the sight of this. He couldn't recall ever seeing anybody actually give him a tip before. Surely someone had in all his time doing this act, but if they had, he couldn't remember. "Ow, ow!" Toby suddenly cried out as the cat began to climb his pants leg, seeking higher ground. The pain of those tiny nails brought him back to the present moment. He wanted to shake the cat off, but he also didn't want to lose his momentum with the crowd. So he held out his cards, asking a lady in the audience to pick a card, any card. She pointed at one, and before the magician could even fold the deck back together, the cat finished climbing his body and ran down his arm to bat its paw towards the woman's finger on the other side of the card, smacking a single card out of his hand. Managing to fold the deck before dropping the rest of them, Toby picked up the card and asked the woman, "Is this your card?" No way, the cat just picked the right card, Toby thought. "No, that's not my card," she said. "Well, blame the cat," Toby said quickly. The audience roared with laughter. That was not a pre-planned gag, but nobody here was aware of this. They were just enjoying themselves, having a good time. And the tiny orange demon was also eating up all the attention it was getting. Back on the ground now, it chewed on the magician's ankle. It hurt, but he didn't care. Things were going so well. The audience began taking pictures of the cat, while it tugged at Toby's cape as though it were his mortal enemy. Toby realized too late that the cat had caught one of his tricks, and the entire length of multicolored tied-together scarves were pulled out and unraveled as the cat ran off just far enough with them to make an entirely laundry load of scarves fall to the ground. Toby chased after the cat in a sad little circle, trying to get it to let go of the first scarf, and the audience was dying with laughter, absolutely loving the show. The cat abruptly gave up the scarf and just plopped itself down onto the sidewalk, curled its tail around its paws, and just stared up at the magician. Calm, peaceful, innocent, acting like it had been the most well-behaved cat in the world all along. Toby looked out to see the crowd, now many times larger than before, had all been entirely buttered up by the little orange agent of chaos. They all looked at Toby with great anticipation of what he'd do next. Kids were grinning. A couple of adults clapped encouragingly. Someone even whispered, "He's adorable." And Toby pretended they were talking about him and not the cat. He cleared his throat, straightened his cape, and said, "Right, so, for my next trick." The audience leaned in. This time when Toby inevitably messed up every single magic trick he tried. The entire audience was conditioned to continue laughing with him instead of at him. When he guessed further cards wrong, the crowd giggled warmly, happier at him messing it up than if he'd gotten it right. When he dropped the coin when trying to vanish it, everyone pretended to see nothing and applauded as though he'd pulled it off. It wasn't good magic, but to this audience, it was still a compelling and entertaining performance. They applauded. They tossed money into his tip hat. They treated him like the real entertainer he'd always tried to be. Toby, cheeks warm and heart swelling, found himself looking back at the cat that still peacefully watched him off to the side as his act came to an end. The sun dipped low and the crowd dispersed, and Toby bowed awkwardly to the few stragglers that yet remained. "Same time tomorrow," he promised. The cat stretched, patted over, and bumped its head against his knee as though to say, "You're welcome, human." "All right, buddy, you win. You can come home with me. I suppose every magician needs a partner, huh?" He picked up his tip hat, keeping a hand underneath it as it still had a big hole in the top, something that had never been a problem before because he'd never had money in it before. The cat purred as it walked alongside him, plotting already how to cause twice as much chaos tomorrow.